party who've been included in that particular cabinet. We also saw there's Miola Umoja One Kenya coalition, some of the principals within it, including NAC Kenya, who are saying, they would love to formally exit the party because this is not what they expected, and say they're not boarding. And so that is one of the key conversations that we'll be having this morning on this particular decision by President William Ruto to include members of the opposition. Is this a broad-based government, or are this survival political realignments just to ensure that he keeps the government running, sort of a soft spot to land on, and yet again opposition saves the day? So we'll be having that conversation with my guest in studio. You can be part of it. Our SMS feedback line is open to 3059. The hashtag on all streaming platforms is #MorningLive. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Let me get you started with stories making headlines across the country first. Now, President William Ruto has called for national unity despite facing criticism for allegedly attempting to undermine the opposition. Speaking during a church service in Taita Taveta County, Ruto defended his recent decision to include 4 senior members of the ODM party in his government, describing it as a crucial step towards fostering national development. The head of state emphasized that the current moment is ideal for unity and collaboration, and he assured that the support from opposition members will strengthen his administration's ability to advance the national development agenda.
Yale mambo yametokea sio maneno mabaya zaidi, kwa sababu yametupatia nafasi ya kutengeneza Kenya mpya. Ndio sababu mimi nimesema naunda serikali ama baraza la mawaziri yenye italeta jamii zote za Kenya pamoja. Italete sehemu zote za Kenya pamoja. Itatuweka sote pamoja. Ndio tuweze kukabiliana kwa pamoja na changamoto za taifa letu la Kenya. Tupange maendeleo pamoja, tulipe madeni pamoja, tutafute ushuru pamoja, na tupangane tukiwa pamoja, ndio Kenya iweze kusonga mbele.
Umefikia wakati sasa wa sisi watu wa Mwatate, na naamini na Taita yote Taveta kwa ujumla kufanya kazi na serikali. Tumekaa nje kwa muda mrefu na tumeona hatujafanikiwa lolote. Na kama rais atakuja siku moja hivi na yote haya yafanyike, je, tukikaa hapo sote tuingize miguu hapo kutakuwaje?
Unapopanga serikali, tunataka kukuambia rais, tunakuunga mkono 100% katika zile mpangilio ambazo unafanya kuhakikisha ya kwamba umeweka Kenya pamoja. Kwa sababu usipopanga Kenya yetu, hatutakuwa na Kenya ya kujivunia. Hatutakuwa na Taita Taveta ya kusema tunajivunia na amani na kuzungumza kupanga miradi, hatutakuwa nayo. Kwa hivyo tunakuunga mkono sana katika mabadilisho yale yote unafanya katika kupanga nchi yetu. Sisi tuko na wewe hapo na tutatembea na wewe.
Ya kwamba kila hali iko na majira yake. Kwa hivyo haya ni majira ya kuungana na kushirikiana na kufanya kazi pamoja. Kwa hivyo nataka niwashukuru sana, niwaombe Wakenya wote, ninyi watu wa Taita Taveta mkijulikana sana kama watu wanaomheshimu na kumwabudu Mungu. Niwaulize ninyi huku milimani muweze kuomba kwa ajili ya taifa letu. Nikiwauliza Wakenya wote tuungane.
Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua now says that the Mount Kenya region is satisfied with the appointments made by President William Ruto. Rigathi says those who claim that the region got a raw deal were mistaken, as all he had asked for, he had gotten. He also says that he has no problem with the opposition joining the government, despite having put all the traps at State House to stop this from happening.
Hakuna shida. Kuna shida. Kwa sababu hata hii maminister wameteuliwa. Sisi hatuna shida. Kwa sababu sisi katika eneo hili bado poteza chochote. Rebecca Miano amerudishiwa yake. Murang'a tumepata. Kirinyaga tumepata. Kiambu tumepata. Embu tumepata. Meru tumepata. Nakuru tumepata. Kuna shida. Wale Tharaka Nithi tumepata. Sasa hao wengine wakuja tufanye kazi. Kwa sababu mimi kama Deputy President, kazi yangu ni kumsaidia rais na kuwa mwaminifu kwake na kumheshimu. Ile ameamua, mimi nafuata kwa sababu mimi ni msaidizi wake na siwezi bishana na yeye. Kwa hivyo yale yote amefanya, sisi tumekubali. Yangu nimetetea na imefanyika. Mimi nimesema niangaliliwe hii, imeangaliwa. Sisi tunaendelea. Kwa hivyo hakuna shida na sisi tunaendelea kuwa waangalifu.
Now, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has directed all Wiper Party members to vote against the ODM members of parliament who are appointed into the cabinet or nominated into the cabinet when the vetting begins on the floor of the House. Speaking in a church service, Kalonzo says ODM nominees should officially join the Kenya Kwanza party instead of pretending to be in the opposition. He also says ODM members will be tested during the vetting since they claim the individuals accepted their appointments without the party's blessings. However, the Wiper leaders was castigated by some Kenya Kwanza leaders over those remarks.
Tunangojea tuone. Mimi nimetoa direction kama party leader kwa Wiper members of parliament, an important member of Azimio. Hawa majina ya watu wanne ikiletwa kwa bunge kwa kupatiwa idhini, wana Wiper pigeni no. Na mmesikia Mheshimiwa Irene akisema no. Sasa ODM wamewekewa mtego mkali sana. Kama watapiga ndio kuwaidhinisha hawa, basi Kenya itaamini kumbe mlikuwa mnatudanganya kwamba wameenda kivyao. Because these are leaders of ODM, 2 deputy leaders, hata minority leader mwenyewe kwa bunge ambaye tulimpa mamlaka hayo. At least I should have been consulted as a leader in our coalition. I didn't know. Minority mwenyewe akaenda. Chairman wa ODM mwenyewe akaenda. Sasa mimi nataka niuliza hawa wenzetu hawa ambao wameenda, kweli wanaamini ile mpangilio wa kiuchumi wa Ruto unaitwa bottom up? Ambao hiyo bottom up imeonyesha ulegevu mkubwa, na sisi tunaamini hao watu wanne ambao wametoka kwa Azimio, hao kusema kweli tuseme wameenda kwa Ruto na wameenda wakiendanga. Sawa? Wale ambao tumebaki kwa Azimio, members wa Azimio, political parties, Wiper ikiwemo, ODM ikiwemo. Now we want to see in ODM, even did they say these people went on their own, wameenda kivyao, without the concurrence and authority of ODM, which is a major party in Azimio. The proof of the pudding, they say, is in the eating.
Hapo ndio tukajua hii shida tuko nayo sio shida ya finance bill, ni shida ya kisiasa ya wajamaa fulani ambao wako na tamaa, ambao wanamuonea wivu rais na wanaona ni kwamba waharibu nchi ya Kenya kwa ajili ya their own benefit. Lakini William Samoei Ruto, kijana wenu, ninyi ambao mlimuinua na mkamwombea na ni mtu anamcha Mungu, akajua kwamba political problem requires political solution.
And us as leaders from the North Rift, as leaders from UDA, we support the president 100% on the decision he has made to bring ODM to government.
Alafu tunaona Kalonzo hapa anafanya sijui nini. Ile 207 alikuja akasupport Kibaki na akasema he wanted to ensure Kenya does not ban. Sasa saa hizi Raila akikuja kutusupport ndio Kenya isichomeke, kuna shida. So waacha Kalonzo akule dawa pole pole. Serikali sasa iko stable.
Kuna baadhi ya wakora na viongozi pia ambao walitaka kutumia nafasi hiyo kupindua serikali ya halali ya Kenya, na sisi hatuwezi kubali. The decision by the President of Kenya, President William Ruto, the 5th president of this republic, to establish a broad-based government that has brought members of ODM into government. It is the right decision made at the right time to stabilize this country. Kwa hivyo watu kama Kalonzo and others wenye 2007 walisema wameingia kwa serikali kustabilize, unless they are forgotten, Raila Odinga, the party leader of Azimio One Kenya, has equal rights also in this republic to make a decision to stabilize the country.
Tunataka kushukuru ile uhusiano yenye tumeunda sasa yenye ni behaves like a government of national unity. This is to make this country move forward.
All right, now let's take a look at the newspapers and what is making headlines, or at least who is making headlines. So I'll kick it off with the Standard newspaper that speaks of Gachagua running out of options. Gachagua, a man running out of options. Now, path to 2027, it is not in doubt that Deputy President harbours ambitions to succeed President William Ruto. And if he thought, he was close to his target by endearing himself to Mount Kenya, then the target has moved quite a distance as the bromance between the president and Raila Odinga blossoms. Now, often more than not have a conversation around the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and the choices that are being made in government by President William Ruto. If we remember all correctly, back last year in 2023, and during the Azimio demonstrations, and he was very adamant, and he said he's actually the one gatekeeping that particular gate at State House, just to ensure that, the opposition then, or at least led by Raila Odinga, does not now come join government. But now, things have changed, times have changed, and it seems he wasn't really quite able to gatekeep that particular door very well, because we saw the head of state now calling for a broad-based government, has had conversation, he says, with the ODM leader, not a coalition government though, just conversations around what needs to be done to make the country at peace, to make the country better, to help the country develop economically, socially, you name it. And now this proves a big hurdle, and particularly it may make him have to recalculate the path to 2027. What does he do now? Well, he says he has no problem with the opposition joining government. He says he is satisfied. But is that far from the truth, or is it the truth? And so, as the Standard puts it, Gachagua is running out of options on his path to 2027. It is not doubt that Deputy President harbours ambitions to succeed President William Ruto, be it 2027 or 2032. And if he thought he was close to his target by endearing himself to Mount Kenya, then the target has moved and the goalposts have shifted. So that is a story that is on page 4. As it also further says, Gachagua is likely to be a victim of Raila because Ruto dalliance in 2027 elections. And so Raila's centrifugal political forces have disrupted UDA's tectonic plates. In fact, if you listen to what UDA members are saying right now, you'd be mistaken to think that they're within the opposition. And so those are the times we're living in right now, even as the plates are shifting to the disadvantage of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Now, as the Standard continues to put, it has been a surprising turn of events as Ruto turned to his political rival Raila Odinga to stabilize his struggling Kenya Kwanza administration, which is reeling under massive countrywide protests over poor governance, corruption, and opulence. It began on June 18th when it is looking like a new chapter was writing in Kenya's politics. Anti-government protests, in fact, anti-tax protests first, then the anti-government protests, which evolved into a wider campaign for more accountability. And so last week, Ruto consummated a political marriage with Odinga's ODM party, proving the motion that the country's politics was a high-stake game driven by interests, intrigues, and manipulations. By having 4 of his close allies appointed to the cabinet, Raila has distinguished himself as an astute political chess grandmaster whose shrewdness and maneuvers have once more, against all odds, catapulted him into the sanctums of power. So that is one of the things that we'll be having a conversation on this particular point that we are in, these political realignments that we are seeing just to save political lives for that matter. Or is this an honest, broad-based government that the head of state has put up to be able to ensure that they stabilize his government amidst the protests? Also, government clears Raila's path to AUC submission ready. Odinga's bid for the African Union Commission chairman is gaining momentum after he signed his application documents ahead of the submission deadline on August 6th. That is also a headline that is on top of the Standard. And we're looking at a situation where February 2025 is when the elections will be held. Remember, this is a continental election, not a country's election. What a country can do is be able to submit a candidate and support that particular candidate. And so that is where we are at the moment as Kenya. The Kenya Kwanza government, under the leadership of President William Ruto, has submitted Odinga as its candidate, will support Odinga as its candidate, even as they marshal other heads of state and the heads of government across Africa to support this particular bid. So how will it go? We'll also be taking a focus on just the various candidates that have declared their interest for that particular position. National news as well, Ruto Gen Z Momenta wake-up call to all on good governance, because right now every step a public officer does is highly scrutinized by the Gen Zs. And so is this a good way for accountability? Well, yes, because it makes people make the right decisions, for lack of a better word. And then parents anxious over Gen Z fever as schools close. The August break has renewed fears that students might get caught up in the protests or even pushed to participate. So those are the headlines on the Standard. Now to the Daily Nation, very quickly, Ruto turns to usual strategy. And this is political. He is camped in the coast for days after picking Joho to join his cabinet. Same old script as President William Ruto is back to his usual strategy of touring regions he perceives will accord him a good reception after doing out political rewards in cabinet appointments, a script he has perfected since coming to power in 2022. The political tours are usually disguised as development visits, and that is a story that is on page 4 and page 5. Now, he landed in Mombasa on Thursday night or Thursday evening, and the first rally he held, which was in Mombasa, he was asking the people, haven't you seen that I've given Joho this particular position in my cabinet? Will you allow him to come join me in my cabinet? And of course, being a political base for the former Mombasa County governor who has been in power for that particular county for 2 terms, eventually means something to the people. And so this is just same strategy, same person, just different points in time, as he goes back to regions which he's been able to do those rewards. He was actually also in Tharaka Nithi County, and was accompanied by Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Interior National Administration CS nominee. And so this strategy, we've seen it before. And so Ruto falls back on an old strategy to win support. And so he's made, of course, key announcements to the cabinet. 4 members from the ODM party. We've got 5 familiar faces, the likes of Aiden Duale to Forest and Environment, Soipan Tuya, who's joining defense. We've also got Dr. Alfred Mutua. We've got the likes of Professor Kithure Kindiki. Davis Chirchiro also rejoins the cabinet. Kipchumba Murkomen as well rejoins the cabinet if approved by the National Assembly. And so this sets the stage for Parliament to now make that decisive decision on whether to approve these particular nominations or reject, and if they do, then on what grounds. So that is the headline on the Daily Nation. Even as it speaks of MPs clash with senators over the conflicts of interest bill, it's a question of tenders. Do public officials, can they get tenders from government, or are they banned from getting these particular tenders? Well, that is a debate that will be at the center of Parliament, that will definitely clash members of Parliament and the senators. Also scramble to cash in on Gen Z wave. Over 20 applications for name reservations have been made to the Office of Registrar of Political Parties with the eye on 2027 polls. You trust Kenyans to commercialize every single process in this country. Also, red flags in Adani JKI deal, mirror auditors 2018 concerns. Questions being asked about the proposal to lease JKIA to an India firm mirrors concerns. The Auditor General flagged about a similar abortive deal involving Kenya Airways in 2018. So there have been questions of the JKIA and this issue of leasing and whether or not we could just be losing this particular airport right under our noses. So, well, those are the headlines on the dailies this morning. That is on the Daily Nation, which speaks of Ruto turns to usual strategy, as the Standard speaks of Gachagua running out of options. So those are your headlines this morning. All right, do stay with us. We're taking a very short, quick breather, but when we come back, we'll be getting into the conversation this morning, the state of the current affairs in the country, political realignments that we are seeing in the picture. Also, the Gachagua factor is running out of options. What options are these exactly, and why is he in this particular position, as well as this broad-based cabinet? We've got 21 names so far, just the Attorney General who is yet to be nominated. So we'll be having this conversation and much more when we come back. You can start sending in your feedback across our social media platforms. The hashtag is Morning Live. And that is around the state of the nation and the affairs that we're seeing in the country, the decisions that are being made at the higher office, and what that means for the political landscape, what that means for Kenyans as well, particularly for the Gen Zs who've been out on the streets for more than a month now, we'll call it, protesting over against the finance bill which was shot down. They are now protesting against the government and some of the decisions that are being made in government. In fact, they've led to quite big decisions being made, and that concerns the cabinet. We saw the dissolution of the cabinet, which happened earlier this month, about July 11th, 12th, and now we have seen new nominees that are yet again to be nominated to the cabinet, some old faces, some old people that we know, people from the opposition that we know, as well as new people that we've never met before, who we can now call technocrats, just because of their non-involvement with the country's politics. So we'd love to get that conversation started. Your feedback is highly welcomed across our social media platforms. Do tell us what you think, what your thoughts are. Is this the right step that the president make? Is this a political realignment for political survival? Or is this actually a broad-based government that we are seeing right here with us? So let me introduce my guest in studio very quickly. On my immediate right, I'm joined by Muito Mureithi, who's a political commentator. Asante sana for coming in, Muito. Good to have you.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. And next to him is Wycliffe Alutalala, who's a political analyst. Asante sana, Wycliffe, for coming in this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so gentlemen, before we get this conversation started, I'd love us to listen to President William Ruto on why he involved members from the ODM party within this particular government. So let's listen into that. That was an address he made last week on Wednesday at State House.
I commend the leadership of diverse organizations, both in public and private sectors, including political parties, for their encouraging response to my outreach to consult on forming a broad-based government. Their willingness to set aside partisan positions and interests in order to join a visionary partnership for the radical transformation of Kenya is a historic gesture of their patriotism. I know and I understand acutely the huge expectation of the people of Kenya on me and this administration. And I equally understand that that responsibility can be made easier if we work together as a nation.
All right, so that was President William Ruto last week, Wednesday, after just before actually he nominated some of those particular names. He took a bit of time, almost 3 minutes, just explaining what are some of the reasons why he was making decisions such as nominating the persons that we saw from the opposition. And he said, it's about time we set aside partisan politics, and says this is a historic gesture. So let me bring in the gentleman to weigh in on this particular decision, which I'll begin with you.
Yeah.
when the head of state says a broad-based government, and we saw this question come up yet again during this town hall meeting that he had yesterday night, and was tasked to explain what a broad-based government is, and he just said it's just broad-based. But from where you sit, what is a broad-based government? What does it look like? And does it look like some of the people that he's brought in to be able to, help with the development agenda of his government?
Well, to start with, the term broad-based government is just trying to give it a different image from the one we had with the government of national unity.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it means, which had actually taken place in 2008 after the post-election. And the inclusion of the opposition into the ruling government was something that took place, happened that time. But if they call it government of national unity, then there'll be too much comparison between this one and the other one. So they gave it a broad-based government. Of course, even then, there were so many professionals who actually brought into government who are not really so vocal on their political affiliation, and which is what the president intends to do at this time. Remember, even then, since the rejection of the Bomas draft in 2005, the political structure, the political system, the political flow actually began to change the tides because there was the fall of the MOU around that time, and then which led to the fall of the rejection of the bill, and it was quite a heated political era. So come 2007, post-election violence, need for Kenyans to come together and think this thing through together was actually the pinnacle around that time. Not necessarily that when you have a government of national unity, there was a failure in the previous government, but if the criticism outweighs the support of the sitting government's works and efforts, then definitely the one that is opposing, regardless of whatever sense or no sense that would have been in whatever was being vocalized, then definitely that means that something had to be done, which is the position that the current president, William Ruto, found himself in the uprising by the Generation Z. The Gen Zs brought in that heat, which of course some political formation also jumped in, and that is when the introduction of the term Goon Zs started. Who joined as Gen Zs, but they were really goons, but they actually emanated from certain political parties. And I'm saying this with full proof, because I actually sampled this 2 days before they did that. I think I said it here before they even joined in that Monday, that tomorrow we're going to have some political parties which are going to join in this struggle. Now what I'm trying to say is, of course, the opposition saw this as a chance to jump in, and the government, having been pushed by the Generation Z, the Gen Zs, and also the opposition, which had started long even before the formation, the formation of the government, the Kenya Kwanza government. I mean, within the third month, they had already declared the Kenya Kwanza government as a government that is not capable, Yet, even allocation of duties and responsibilities had not even, His Excellency the President had not even completed. And it went on, it actually transitioned into, chaos and riots in the name of, peaceful demonstrations and whatever. And we saw what we experienced. The Unga thing came, the Sufuria thing came about, It was all meant to destabilize. And they said, we'll make your rulership and leadership, your government and, leadership unmanageable. You'll not be able to rule this country. We'll make it hard for you. They said it openly, and so that was the tactic. Now, let's see who has the noose on his neck. Is it really the president and his team, or is it the ODM?
Right, and we'll come to that in just a bit, Muito, to talk about that news particularly.
Okay.
Now, Altalala, from what Muito says, it seems like this had to be done because of obviously the events that have led us to this particular time and moment that we're in right now. It had to be done one way or the other for the president. There was no way out of it because, you know, there was a lot of pressure on his cabinet, on his government, on members of parliament from his side, on himself, on the deputy president. There was a lot of pressure on it. And so perhaps he thought, how about I include members from the other side of the opposition? Let me bring them in and, you know, the heat may just cool off. So at this point in time, was this the right decision to make?
First of all, I think before we come to the issue of whether it was the right thing and the right time to do it, we need to, first of all, look at the events leading to this decision.
Yeah.
Now, as my brother says here, when this Gen Z thing came up, number one, it was unexpected. Nobody expected it. And within a very short time, the heat was just too much. And the impact was huge. And for the first time, you could see the president in real panic. Now, in such situations, you need some quick response. And that's why within, was it like 7 days? Especially after the 25th.
Yes.
After the Gen Zs went into parliament, the president had to come up with some very drastic measures, including sacking his entire cabinet, announcing the merging or collapsing of like 37 state agencies and parastatals, removing the first ladies' offices and everything. All these were very drastic measures that were done within a very short period. And that tells you the amount of heat or the amount of tension that was in government.
Yeah.
So that incident actually took government by surprise. It was not expected. Neither did we as Kenyans also expect. So now, as this thing, after the president took the first steps, especially after sacking the entire cabinet, I remember during that time the Gen Zs were saying, reshuffle cabinet. But what he did was, he removed the entire cabinet. Now, the theme then now changed from, first of all, it was reject finance bill, which he did.
Yeah.
He actually didn't reject, he removed the entire bill. Then it came to reshuffle cabinet, he removed the entire cabinet. Now the theme now changed to Ruto must go. So with the ever-changing themes, like after 2 days, the theme is changing. He does this, it changes. He does this, it changes. Yeah. Now, as Mredi says, it reached a point where by now, we now started seeing the destruction of property. Now what is calling the Gunzis. Now, when these Gunzis now came in, the whole narrative changed. Because you remember, during the first two demos, the first Tuesday and the first Thursday, they were very peaceful. In fact, I remember one MP saying, these Gen Z boys who are coming to town using Uber and going to KFC cannot sustain these demonstrations. But now, when the Gunzis came in and we started seeing property being destroyed, shops being looted, all that manner of things, I remember that is when government, through the CS Defense, came up with the issue of deploying KDF. That was a sign that something was terribly wrong somewhere, and things were not very okay. So, as he says it, these Gunzis were not actually just, you know, the Gen Zs, the first time they came, it was more of spontaneous. But these ones seemed like they were well coordinated from some organized groupings, which may include political parties, as he says. Now, that is when the president realized this thing is now moving out of hand. It is no longer about Gen Zs, it is turning political. So to me, what is happening is purely political realignment. Whether you call it broad-based, government of national unity, coalition government, the underlying factor is this is political realignment for self-preservation so that you cool down the tempers.
Yeah. Was this the only way out?
I think from where I sit, yes. Because looking at the Gen Z demonstrations, if you have been following them, their issues are very clear. And most of them now are touching on governance, whereby we are now scrutinizing every decision that government makes, which is a good thing. And this is something that has been lacking in this country. Because we have been seeing a lot of opulence, a lot of wastage, and nobody could ask. So for the first time, in fact, I'm really looking forward to this vetting of this cabinet, the new cabinet nominees. And I don't expect them to go through, some of them. If the MPs have learned anything from these Gen Z demonstrations, I expect several names in that list to be rejected.
Right.
Because one thing that the Gen Zs are saying, and is very loud and clear, is that we don't want anybody who has been involved in corruption in a government office. Whether you have been proven or not, you just have to be aside, so that, because this country has 50 million Kenyans, we have very clean people in this country. So we don't want anybody with a tainted image in this government. Right. So I'm just hoping that the parliamentary committee that will be vetting these people should be very keen and should be able to listen to what the people are saying. Because now that is what is coming out, that most of our parliament has been listening more to the president than to the people who elected them. So what people are saying is, we want a clean government.
Right.
And that is the message out there.
Right. Yeah. Now, Mwito, Alutalala says this is, from where he sits, this is pure political realignments. And yet, the head of state is responding to a group of people who've called themselves partyless, you know, they've called themselves tribeless, and so many other wordless things that they've called themselves. And so, sounds like, you know, he didn't respond to how the Gen Zs wanted, because the moment he actually finished nominating, or giving the names of those nominees, if you go through online and just listening to what people have said, we've been out on the streets to listen to what they're saying is they're not satisfied, and they're not happy with the fact that as much as they were a partyless group, they're not, you know, leaning to any political party. Political parties still played a huge role in who was nominated to that cabinet. Yeah.
Well, this is all politics. And what the Gen Zs may not have understood, and I can't blame them, is because of their age and lack of exposure. And I must say that, knowing that there can be a backlash, because everybody is just crazy about, oh, Gen Z this, Gen Z that. But to me, I may not set Gen Z as the standard of our reasoning at the moment, or the standard of nationhood at the moment. There's a lot that goes with it, and that includes the constitution, that includes the social fabric that Kenyans ought also to retain, maintain, and also the political system that ought to run seamlessly. If the Gen Zs come calling, we don't want to see people of the former government in there. Are they telling the president also to resign? Of course. The president resigning came with the opposition side who may have joined in this race for, push for Gen Z. The Gen Zs have started now to support them in calling for Ruto to resign. Yeah. Because when you say you don't want Minister so-and-so, and Minister so-and-so is also from the former regimes, and that includes the president, and that includes the opposition that is still urging them on, and which is now in the government, it means somebody is not really coming out clear. Secondly, I told you, if you lock yourself in this studio and assume to be holding an interview with people who are asking questions and answering questions, responding to your questions from the other side of the room, and you didn't know them, you didn't expect them. Because if you're formless, faceless, and you have no party, no whatever, then it makes it very difficult for you to go by such. And definitely, you won't call it an interview from where we sit right now.
Yeah.
So the same thing happened with the president. The president went to X, to the X platform, to find who these Gen Zs are, to come out and speak to him, tell him exactly what he thinks in good faith and honest. And they didn't do that effectively. He went ahead and invited them to State House. Just appoint some very vocal guys of your generation and please come to State House. Tell me what you people are thinking. They said they have no time to talk. So there comes a time when you say enough is enough, like what the president said. And since the country, the whole nation of Kenya is not made of one generation, there are other generations represented. Okay, we have the elderly, the old age, we have the middle age, we have this upcoming, we also have the unborn children who the president had in mind while he was trying to, persuade the Gen Zs to come out and talk. And we had a very good talk with the Gen Zs here who represented, still the same station, EBN, and we said the best way is now getting back to their, institutional cocoons and begin to form something that can have a representation, and which is what now they're doing. I saw students sending their student leadership to the Mombasa meeting. And I believe once they begin to do that, which was what we advised them here, go back there, but make sure that you also accommodate, don't come in only as university students, because if you come in as university students, you'll get the other support of other guys in that generation. So what is happening here is a political survival. The president had to do that for his survival to continue in leadership. And he also had to do this as a strategist, because His Excellency, the President, William Ruto, is a strategist. He is a man whom you give your strategy, give your plan, and he tallies with what he had in mind. That's why some people are shocked that he's going to the ground to check the ground for himself. Because what he has received, he has to tally with what he has with himself. So the president had to play that survival politics, and he was very candid. The best way to win any case is to build evidence for your side, in your favor. And going to the X platform, inviting them, seeking to talk to them, laying off all powers and authority granted to him by the Constitution, and chosen to allow every person to just come out and say what they want, and I mean the president seems to have allowed himself to get injured, but get the right sentiments, the right emotions, the right ideas, whatever Kenyans really wanted, so that he can serve them better. That is what the president was looking for. So there are people who may misunderstood the president. I thought that he is a pet president. And I said here, when you see a lion relaxing, it has claws. Though at this time you can even shake that lion's paw, but remember, those paws have got claws. So the clause will be the law, the constitution, and whatever the mandate that has been given by Kenyans, and he has to fulfill them. Right. So that means enough is enough.
Alutilala, if you look at our history in Kenya, post 2007 and after the election violence in the country, we saw that the government side and the opposition came together, formed this grand coalition government, or what they now call government of national unity, which basically gave Odinga then the prime ministerial position, and also some of the members of the opposition went into the cabinet. Now, the difference with what is happening now is that he's not getting the prime ministerial position, but there are members that have gone into the cabinet right from the opposition. And there's a saying that goes, if it quacks like a duck and talks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. Is this a coalition government rather than a broad-based government?
Okay, as I said, I think for me, I still read politics in whatever is happening. And it is also important for us to remember that there have been reports that even these Gen Z demonstrations, as much as they are saying they are tribeless, partyless, leaderless, and everything, it may not be entirely true. Because there have been reports that in some areas, some of the demos were funded. And there have even been names attached to those funding, including politicians. So what is happening is that you cannot rule out politics from whatever is going on in the country right now. And remember, we are just in the second year of Ruto's presidency. And in Kenya, normally our elections, we normally start campaigns 1 year before the elections. So whatever is happening is political realignment, because now the president is realizing that he may be having people, even in his own government, who may not be 100% loyal to him. And in politics, anything is possible. You've seen there's been several attempts of registering the Gen Z party. I saw the Register of Political Parties has rejected 10 applications. Meaning, somebody somewhere is already feeling there is a gap or there is an opportunity to use this Gen Z wave for 2027 elections. So as a politician, because the president, first of all, is a politician, he also must prepare himself for 2027 elections. Politically. So whatever the president is doing is also part of his preparations for 2027. And the difference between now and what happened in 2007 during the Government of National Unity is that Raila Odinga, as you said, was given the Prime Minister's position. But now, as we are looking currently, already before these Gen Z demonstrations, there have been this talk of Raila succession in ODM. And if we look at what was going on, the 4 top leaders who are being looked at as possible replacements for Raila in ODM are actually the 4 who have been appointed to cabinet. Because Wycliffe Oparanya is the first deputy party leader. Joho is the second deputy party leader. Opiyo Wandayi is the leader of minority in parliament. Mbadi is the party chairman. So this is the top cream of ODM party. So the fact that the president has taken the 4 top leaders of ODM into government, and given the fact that the party leader himself, who is now Raila Odinga, is being prepared to go for the African Union chairmanship, tells you that it's like we have taken the top leadership of the party into government. So I think I'll not be surprised if by 2026 we'll be having a new formation whereby we'll be having ODM as a party teaming up with UD as a party to go into the next elections as one coalition.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, just to also give an update on our view, to have John Mukoyo from ODM party here, and unfortunately couldn't make it, but he would have been best placed to answer some of these questions regarding the ODM party. But from an observer point of view, Muito, from this point onwards now, how will ODM members be behaving at least? Or at least, how members of parliament will they be behaving? Because the first big task they have, especially after these recent developments, is the vetting of this particular cabinet secretary nominees. We've got nominees, who are technocrats. They do not belong to any political party, at least from our knowledge we've gathered so far. We've got members here who obviously, are from UDA party and the Kenya Kwanza regime. We've got members here who are from the ODM party. And so what do you expect from this new, do I call it relationship or dalliance that we are seeing between the ruling party and the opposition party?
Well, thank you for that question. ODM as a party is going to do a very serious realignment, because as it stands, even with the evidence of the paper, that the government now clears Raila's path to AU commission race. It means one thing, that Raila's commitment to national politics is actually now going to dwindle. What it means is that there are some guys who are going to come up. And what I've seen, even with the Western Kenya trying to align itself, both UDA and ODM are combining forces as young Turks. And they're coming up. There was a time we had faces of guys from the ODM. When we introduced this thing of Raila Odinga running for the AU chairmanship, we saw the young faces. And of course, you can pick them from the Young Parliamentarians Association. Of course, the likes of Babu Ino, Aladwa, and many others. All these guys, including those of Mount Kenya, including those of Western, they are in the same formation. So what is happening right now, there's somebody who is sitting down in Mount Kenya and sees Rigathi Gachagua 4 years to come as being at a certain age. So they're trying to play their game here, the young men of the 40s. Same thing is going to happen with ODM. I don't know how it's going to turn out in 2027, but I believe ODM as a political party may not really survive without Raila Odinga, because there's not all, especially from where the larger backing of ODM comes from. It's not really from Western Kenya, it's actually from Nyanza. And if the leader says turn right and they choose to go right, then it means is non-consequential if other small groupings choose to think otherwise. Like when you see the likes of maybe Jubilee or ODM Kenya, led by Kalonzo Musyoka, or even NAK Kenya. So whatever goes for Raila Odinga, that will mean the survival of ODM. It may not survive as strong as it used to be, because there will be Madarau, you know. Each one of them will feel, I mean, you don't qualify to be that type of a team leader as Raila Odinga was. He had set a very high standard without grooming no one. So definitely there's no one to look up to. And if there is anyone to be looked up to, he has already sold them out to Kenya Kwanza.
Sold them out?
Yeah, sold them out. Sold them out as in, today you can see he's already gotten his AU thing cleared.
Yeah.
You get the point? So he was trading something.
Scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Scratch my back, I scratch yours. And that's what he did. So what has happened is that he sacrificed his whole leadership that every ODM member had confidence in. It means they will now have to go back to grassroots, start from the scratch, and see who is it that we're going to really, who's going to inherit the respect that they had accorded to Raila Odinga. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, which means might be the collapse of ODM towards 2027 come elections. Because His Excellency the President, William Ruto, being the strategist he is, he'll make sure ODM does not survive. So this is the politics, it's the reality of politics. It doesn't sound so sweet when I say this, but that's the reality. He will have to swallow ODM wholesome.
Altalala,
Yeah.
you're really smiling due to that statement. You know, when Wito began a bit earlier on, he said the news tightens, on whose neck does the news tighten more now at this particular point in time? And from what he's saying, seems it's tightening more on Raila Odinga's side, because eventually if he makes it at the AUC, he's not allowed to participate in local politics. He says the top leadership have been sold out to the government side. And so, I mean, what next now at this point in time?
Now, you know, the reason why I'm laughing is, first of all, I wish Mr. Mkoya was here, because I really wanted to discuss this thing when he's here, so that he can really tell us. You know, now, me, I'm not an ODM member.
Yes.
So I may not be knowing the nitty-gritties of their plan. But from an objective point of view, the way my brother says, first of all, we need to remember, these two parties, ODM and UDA, had plans to do their national elections this year, actually in April.
Yeah.
UDA started the elections. It got somewhere, I think it is ongoing, because they had staggered the elections in different regions.
Yeah.
Now, ODM had pushed the elections. It was supposed to be in April, but they said they'll announce later. So now, a lot is happening, especially in ODM, because now, as they were planning to do their elections, here comes now the issue of their members, their top leadership joining government.
Yeah.
So as he says, there will be a lot of realignment. Because number one, the party chairman, who is now being nominated to be CS Treasury, needs to be replaced in the party. Because the party cannot run without a chairman. Mr. Pio Andai, who is the minority leader in parliament, needs to be replaced. Because the party must have a leadership in the house.
Yes.
Now, as we go into those, filling those gaps, there will be a lot of shuffling. Because now, it's like, it is now a free area. Everyone will want a share of those positions. And now with the Raila's interest being in AU, he will have very little control and even interest in the local politics. So what may come out is that that party might disintegrate, because already we have seen not everyone is supporting the issue of ODM joining government. We have seen several MPs saying they don't support. Even Babu Wino is on record saying he doesn't support those who have joined government. Including Orengo. So that means this party may disintegrate. We've seen young guys, even from Western, some of them who belong to ODM, including the Secretary General, saying they are meeting to discuss the future, the way forward, and the way forward as not as a party but as a region, and in that age bracket. So what that tells you is that obviously there are going to be fallouts, and we may not talk of breakaways or whatever, but automatically there will be some fallout. Now, on the issue of who the noose, who is now on whose is the neck is the noose on?
Yeah.
I think the answer is very clear that the noose is now on ODM. Number one, politically, and number two, if the 4 nominees from ODM are approved to those positions, looking at the position they have been given, actually,
they don't
what the president has done, he has told these guys, for example, I remember John Buddy said that this country can run without debt and without borrowing. He has been given treasury, so he needs to implement that. Opio and I has been very loud, saying the fuel prices in this country are unmanageable. He has been given that role to ensure the fuel prices come down. Wycliffe Oparanya once said that this hustler fund is useless. He has been given the opportunity to ensure that Kenyans can get loans, free loans that you cannot pay back. Because anyone who was opposed to this hustler thing was saying, this is actually, ODM guys say that this is government money. You don't need to pay back. And that's why that's the reason why this hustler fund has a lot of defaulters.
Yeah.
So you see, the 3 ministries those guys have been given are purely ministries that they will have to perform contrary to what they used to say when they were on the other side. So when you talk about the news, politically, ODM is in a tight position, because now, even looking at its role as opposition, are they going to be real opposition in parliament, or are they going to be pro-government? Because that is another question that we need to ask ourselves. Who is going to be the minority leader? Is it going to be from ODM as a party? Or are they going to give it to another Azimio party because it was a coalition?
Yeah.
That is another question.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, you'll answer with this as well, Muito. You'll also bring in the point on what the Standard has printed out this morning on, Gachagwa's limited options.
Yeah.
And the question on what is Gachagwa's role in the middle of these realignments and these, approaches and decisions that are being made in a government to which he's the second in command to. So you can answer that as well as what you wanted to add on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before I get to that one,
Yes.
I think he got it right. And this is what I meant when I said the noose is actually going to be tightened. And it is them to tighten it by themselves, on themselves. Because they actually held accountable of the words they spoke earlier. Somebody may say, oh, they have been allowed in. Gachagua had put all traps everywhere.
Yeah.
But when things happened with the Gen Zs, let me tell you, when you're very strategic, sometimes you loosen some traps to have your prey into the cage, and you give some lead. And the coalition that we are having right now between the government and the opposition led party, or ODM, is actually a win for Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua, by definition, is the principal personal assistant to the president. And being a very honest man, he did a very honest duty that was almost led to, to be misconstrued by Kenyans through what the media used to post to Kenyans. That Gachagua is actually fighting against his president, or is in rivalry with the president.
Yeah.
Yet he was telling the president, please don't let this finance bill come up or even go through. That's a person who advises you with all honest and love. And that is Rigathi Gachagua for His Excellency President William Ruto. So opening some floodgates, east, west, south floodgates, and allowing the ODM to come through. The ODM did not know they've entered a trap. That if you said that Kenyans are overtaxed, then be the one to reduce the taxes.
Yeah.
Okay? Advise us on how this government is going to run without the taxes. And I'm telling you, if it happens, there are some who might withdraw and they choose to say, let me remain in opposition as an opposition member. Because now, upon what we have just spoken right now, some of them are listening. Because Mbadi will have to help the government run without more borrowing. The other gentleman who is occupying the public service will have to show the Gen Zs where the jobs are in government. It's laughable. That's what I'm saying. When you play around with a man like His Excellency, the President, whom I've always called a strategist, because I know, I'm a strategist myself, I know how it works, that even when things turn sour, at that very moment, you don't begin to rue over what has happened. You begin to think, what do I do from here? What's left of me? Like Moses was asked by God, what do you have in your hands? Now, that's what His Excellency the President, much as he seemed confused, one thing he had resolved within himself is that he's not going to let the presidency go. So definitely he had to start from somewhere. And that's why the president came up with these all new ideas, loosen here, lock there. That's what he has done. So the people who are going to tighten the noose are the ones who are going to accept these positions from the opposition. They will do that for themselves, just the way Kalonzo Musyoka did to himself in 2022 elections.
Yeah.
Remember, he had an opportunity to be in government as number 3. When His Excellency the President invited him while they were somewhere, I think in Mwingi, and he told him kuja tufanye kazi, and he actually ridiculed the President's call. But this is what he was being told. You will regret. Today, he's wondering, why could you even consult me, being one of the principals? I mean, you were not one of the principals. One of the principal guys was Uhuru Kenyatta, who was not in the race, but he had Martha Karua there, So these are the political signs that Kalonzo Musyoka would have read. Now, these are the political signs that the ODM guys ought to read. Now, the hardest part will be now to step down, having earned Raila Odinga the support of the government, full support of the government, and expect to remain a friend of Raila Odinga when you step down or reject this appointment, you know, upon realization that what you were campaigning against is what now you will be campaigning for. And that includes the bottom-up agenda, because that's not going to change. You have to fulfill William Ruto's leadership agenda and manifesto.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of debunking and you know, reloading. I mean, loading up new software. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time.
Which reminds me, there was a paper that had printed out last week that said, you know, very soon you'll hear them say, you know, us as the Kenya Kwanza government, we are committing to fulfill the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
Absolutely.
And it will be quite interesting times. But let me also get your view on that headline of Gachagwa's limited options. And earlier you said, you know, it should have been Raila's limited options, considering that, you know, the explanation that Muito now has been able to put up, and just the situation he finds himself, it's actually a catch-22 situation he finds himself in. So from where you sit, that headline, should it be Gachagua, should it be Raila? And what exactly, you know, does Gachagua have to do with this, and why is he at the center of this yet again? From
if you allow me, before he goes into that one, Gachagua is seated under His Excellency the President on agreement with the Mount Kenya people that Ruto goes for 10 years. So Gachagua has no interest in 2027. That's according to the Mount Kenya people. The people who wanted to bring up the issue of Gachagua's interest are the ones who wanted to weaken him, weaken his influence with the Mount Kenya people, because he is becoming stronger by the day in terms of support by the people from Mount Kenya, not the Mount Kenya leadership, because some of the Mount Kenya leadership are the ones who are actually working against his stability and his influence and foothold that he has on the Mount Kenya region. So regarding Gachagua is for William Ruto all the way to 2032.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's Mount Kenya.
Okay, if I may speak to this issue of Gachagua running out of options. I think there is an attachment there from Lee Njiru, the former President Moi's, was he a PA or something? Who said that when you go hunting with your dog and you are hunting a jackal, remember, jackal and the dog are cousins. They can always turn against you. He was actually referring to the long relationship that has been there between William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, and that group of leaders. Now, what is happening here, actually the reason why even the paper is coming up with such headline is that this being politics, nothing is impossible in politics. And there is someone who said that if you are a politician and you don't have ambitions, then you have no reason being in politics. So Gachagua as a person has an ambition. And of course, being number two, automatically as a human being, you will always want to be number one in future. So why the paper is talking about Gachagua running out of options is that it is trying to analyze, now that the president has brought in his cousin, whom Lee Njiru calls here the relationship between the dog and the jackal. What next? Because the president, even as late as yesterday, has said they don't have a formal agreement with ODM to form a coalition agreement or whatever. But this being politics, we may not know what was discussed beyond the 4 appointments. We may be seeing more coming in future, and even more collaboration going into the future, into 2027.
Right.
So that is where now the issue of where is Gachagua in all this? Because even looking at these appointments, we are not very sure whether the president consulted Gachagua as his deputy on the issue of bringing in ODM into government. That one we are not sure. Then number two, we are not sure what the president plans to do with this ODM going into 2027. Because from where I sit, one thing that I feel GNZ did, which is very good, and it gave the president a clean slate, is that the president can make any decision now politically and will not ask him a question. Because I even know, between me and you, nobody expected that the president could sack the entire cabinet. Nobody. From where I sit, I expected some reshuffle, but he did it. And if you look at these appointments, the way they were done, there were some people who were very close to the president. But he chose not to select and reshuffle, but just sack the entire team. And already we have seen several are already out, because now the cabinet is almost fully reconstituted, but some names are not yet there. Some who are very close to the president. So in politics, you can never be very sure of what next. So even as we go into 2027, we may not be very sure that the president may be running in 2027 on UD as a party.
It could be something entirely
It could be something definitely new. So the question is, where is Gachagua in all this? That's what the paper is actually talking about. What are his options? Because what if he may not be part of the president's plan in 2027? Because it is possible that the president can bring in a new team, like just what he did when he sacked the entire cabinet. And he decides, now that you said this, because I told you, these demonstrations were not purely partyless, tribeless, and leaderless. They were not. They might have been on day one when they began, but as they have been progressing, there has been some political undertones in it. So the president may also be having his, because my brother says he's a strategist, he may also be having his own strategy for 2027, which we may not know. That's why the paper is asking about the options that Gachagua has.
Right.
You see the options.
So, wait, we've got 1 minute to wrap it up, so in seconds.
Just 1 point on these options that Gachagua has. Regarding Gachagua, like any other politician, he definitely has his political ambitions. And if you listen to Rigathi Gachagua, ever since he was, before they even got elected into government, he said, mimi hulala kama nimefungua jicho moja. You know, people don't listen. This is what he means. He says, we could be in a government, yes, but of course he understands, in a State House bedroom, the president is planning something while he's alone. So he himself also has to have his own strategy. And you saw it work out. And Rigathi Gachagua is not really backing on endorsement by the president to remain where he is. Rigathi Gachagua backs on endorsement by the Mount Kenya bloc. So when he saw things were turning sour, he didn't go to State House, what are you doing, what's happening? No. He didn't even care whether you consult him or not. But is my Mount Kenya bloc intact? So that's why people almost say that Rigathi Gachagua seems to be the deputy president of, for Mount Kenya or something like that. But that's not the case. He was actually battling something that had really struck him so hard around that time. So definitely, to keep his dreams alive and also to keep Mount Kenya relevant, Mount Kenya vote relevant in this politics, he had to ensure, and he has to ensure even now and hereafter, that it remains as a united bloc. Right. So that is where his actually feet are actually anchored. You know, the rock that it's anchored, Gachagua's feet, is Mount Kenya bloc, all right, so which is around approximately now 5 million. If the Uhuru Kenyatta joins fully the Gachagua whatever aspirations. All right, so we've got about 30 seconds to wrap it up. I'd love to get the final word from both of you in seconds, kindly. Thank you. I think as we conclude, I would like to say that it was the desire of any Kenyan, having experienced a lot of tumultuous propaganda since the days of Unga to the days of Sufuria to now what has come up, and thanks to Gen Z's brought in the finance bill, it allows Kenyans now to begin to get interested in understanding what is happening. Even the Gen Z's themselves now know that there is also the importance for them not only to understand the finance bill, but to understand the constitution, to understand the law, to understand the parliament, to understand the procedures and everything, you know, so that sometimes you don't shoot down a finance bill simply because a reading has been done, yet it was procedural, because the moment for it to be rejected was actually the one that was coming at the second reading. But you know, they jumped before the beat, you know. And what I'm trying to say is that it goes for all Kenyans. It's very important. Don't read the dailies as your Bible. These are journalists who have an interest, and not journalists. These are media houses that have an interest. They have an inclination. They want to have an alignment with whatever government that is there or an opposition, as long as it gives the marketing department some work to do. I've worked for media in the marketing department, and I can tell you, this is what we sell. You know, when I was working for the Nation, I could use a different tongue while I was still selling the Star as an alternative or option for a balanced politics that time, you know, because they had aligned themselves with the government, others had aligned themselves with the opposition. So this is how it is. So don't read it like a Bible, don't take everything into the heart. It will actually hurt your heart. So for politics in Kenya, please, let's go easy. 2027 is coming, and that's what is taking shape right now. All right,
I think as Kenyans, we are living in interesting times. And what happened with the Gen Z revolution is a wake-up call, especially to government, that Kenyans are now more alert, more aware, and much vigilant on what is going around in the country. So even as we go into the vetting process of these cabinet nominees, my prayer and request to the MPs is that kindly listen to what the people are saying. Let's not assume that this was just a one-day event. It has really awoken up so many people, and people are now really going to be very vigilant with what is going on in government. So we expect a very clean cabinet, and once they are sworn into government, we expect people to work. We don't want to see what has been happening in the past. People just hovering around in choppers, in expensive suits and watches. We want to see real service delivery. And to the MPs also, as you come up with supplementary budgets, I think it is also important not to take advantage that because the finance bill was rejected, you start slashing very critical areas in the name of you said you don't want the finance bill. We need to be objective so that we also don't punish Kenyans by being very overzealous in our budgetary cuts. We need to be very objective.
Right.
Choices have consequences.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. On my immediate right is Mwita Mureithi, who's a political commentator. Asante sana for coming in. And just next to him is Wycliffe Alutalala, a political analyst. Asante sana, gentlemen, for coming in this morning to just shed more light on this particular state of affairs that we are currently in, these political realignments that we are seeing. Alutalala says yes, they are. Or is this an honest, broad-based government, as well as the situation ODM party finds itself in? Well, we would really have loved to have Mukoya here, but he didn't make it. But there's always a next time, and he'll be able to answer some of these questions that we have for him. So asante sana for watching. In case you've missed this broadcast, you can rewatch across our social media platforms. That is on EBN TV. Keep the conversation going. We'd love to engage with you throughout the day. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Have yourself a fantastic morning ahead. Good morning.